Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, or possibly good evening, boys and girls, as this is a children's story reading, which is just long enough for a bedtime story before you go to bed. Now, when Mummy or Daddy says go to bed, that's what you do. Okay, so you've been allowed to have a 15 to 20 minute story, which I'm now using a lot of the time off by explaining all the ground rules to you, but that means that I can get more mileage out of the actual readings I've done, because I'll do this, I'll repeat this bit over and over again at the beginning of every clip. So, without further ado, we'll go to the next thrilling instalment of Jimmy and the Pink Diamond. Although he was very weak, his eyes flashed with the firm determination of an old soldier. He knew his time was near, but he wasn't going to give in just yet. Not him. His reading glasses had slipped from his nose and lay beside him. When Genya helped him to sit up, he raised his head and made a little feeble joke. "Well, boys, I thought you decided to go back to Moscow and start the business without me. Ha, ha, ha." He laughed softly. Genya was furiously trying to cut the fish line with a little knife in his beak, but he wasn't having any luck. Grandfather looked up, surprised to see a cat with his boys. "What do they call you, my son?" the old one asked. He regarded Jim carefully and began to eat a few bites of sausage and a bit of bread and ham. He was starting to feel much better already, especially after he drank another cup of water. "Jimmy tell you whole story later, grandfather," croaked Genya, with tears in his eyes. "First I try to make you free. Then you talk to this little smarty pants friend of Genya. He help us, grandfather." Genya was getting frustrated and careless with the knife and almost cut Boris' leg. "Stop a moment, Genya," sighed the old raven. "Could you bring me more water? That was the worst of it, boys, being so close to the canal and not be able to drink." He drank again, deeply, and smiled. "Let me try, Genya," said Jimmy. He was also afraid that Genya might get too carried away. "Maybe we don't have to cut it at all. Cats are very good with string, you know." Jimmy quickly unravelled the light knots with his claws. "There you go," he said proudly. "Thank you, my son. Did you tell me your name, boy cat?" asked the old fellow again. Jim didn't have time to answer. "Move toes, grandfather, now!" ordered Genya loudly. Grandfather rubbed his stiff legs and happily wriggled his toes. He was delighted that nothing was broken. He was glad to see his boys again. It surprised him that they had brought a cat with them. "You showed up in nick of time," he said. He patted Anton on the head. Anton walked up to the broken panes of glass. He tapped the rest of the splintered glass out of the frame with his beak and asked, "Grandfather, you think you have strength to climb through here? There is enough room." They helped Grandfather to stand. First Genya squeezed himself through the small opening and fell with a thud to the dirt floor. Grandfather followed and fell on top of him. Anton and Jimmy passed all of the food, piece by piece, through the little window. Once inside, they found a big pile of dry newspapers in a cardboard box, 4 dusty cushions, a chair with 3 legs, and a small coffee table. There was a weak smell of mould in the air. No one had been in the tiny room for a long time. Genya, Anton and Jimmy worked hard to make nests out of the newspapers. They ripped and tore, and with the snippets of paper flying like snowflakes. "It must be my destiny," thought Jim. This was the second time today that he had ripped paper. At last there were enough snippets for 4 warm piles. The ravens used their wings like brooms to make the place clean and tidy. Anton found a few candle stubs in a package of old-fashioned matches wrapped in waxed paper and a flat stone to put the candles on. The candle and the street light overhead gave their room a cheerful glow. Grandfather Boris nodded his head. He was well pleased with the result. As a final touch, They lay the tea towel neatly on the rickety table, put the cup, the knife, and what was left of the food upon it. "Exactly like home," said Anton. They ate the rest of the food and passed the cup of water around. "Now that I have a bit of my strength back, I know what we'll do," said Grandfather. "Let's have a wonderful Moscow party." And he began to sing a Russian song about a girl named Katya. Anton and Genya joined in. Jimmy didn't know any of the words, so he sang along with the chorus. It sounded like da 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 da. Da means yes in Russian. Then they sang another song about a girl named Katya who was sitting in her garden waiting for her boyfriend to come home. "He always sings songs about Katya," Genya explained. "She's little wife of grandfather. They married 30 years. She's boss in family. I tell you truth. When she say jump, whole village jump. Pravda, my new little buddy." Everyone began to laugh when Jim joined in. He couldn't help himself because the music made him want to sing. "Look at little Durak," laughed Genya. Durak means idiot, Jimmy, translated Anton. "He laugh, but he no understand a Russian soul," continued Genya, knocking the small cat to the floor with a delicate flick of his wing. "Genya," said Jim, getting back up, "I think I understand one word in your language. Does the word Katya mean cat?" You think all words mean cat? Katya is a famous girl's name in Russia. It is name of queen, name of saint, and name of my babushka." He gave Jimmy another hard clout with his wing, nearly bowling him over again. Jimmy giggled, staggering around with his eyes crossed, pretending to be hurt. The ravens had to hit each other on the back to stop laughing, and Grandfather was giggling and acting sillier than they were. "Now tell me, before I forget," he said, "how did you become friends with my grandsons, Jimmy? And how did you meet?" "Well, it all started because I was a bit naughty when Granny was cleaning the house and I tore up a phone book. I didn't want to, really. It was just lying there on her bed and I couldn't help it. It smelled so nice. Then Granny threw me out onto the back balcony because she was very, very angry with me." "I can imagine. Tell me the rest, Jimmy." "Well, there I was, freezing and hungry. The cat flap was stuck. I scratched it and scratched it, but Granny still wouldn't let me come inside to get warm." "So you live with your Granny here in Amsterdam. What kind of cat is she?" "She's not a cat. She's Dutch. She brought me home from the cat shelter 2 years ago. Granny can be awfully cruel to me when she's angry. Anyway, I went to look over the railing because I saw something moving in the back garden. Then I saw a big monster." "That was us," interrupted Genya, jumping up and down. Jimmy fall off balcony and land in grass. He see me going into shed in garden. He's scared of us. He says, 'Oh, Mama.'" Genya was giggling and trembling, pretending to be absolutely terrified. "Me, big Genya, I see him coming closer and closer." "Yes," admitted Jimmy. "By that time I guess you could say that I was a bit scared, Grandfather." He began to laugh too. "Scared? Scared? You're scared big time, Jimmy," jeered Genya. "You do pee-pee on your own leg." "I did not, Genya. You hurt my tail. You almost bit it off. You know what you did. It wasn't your best idea." "Oh, help me, Mommy," Genya chuckled wickedly. "Wah! Seriously, Jimmy, your tail hurting now. You all right, little friend?" "No thanks to you, Genya," replied Jim. He swatted Genya lightly on the beak. Genya knocked him over and stood on his chest with one enormous foot. "Help! Help! Help!" Jimmy gasped. "I can't breathe any more." "Stop teasing him, Genya. Let him up now. said Anton, who was brushing the crumbs from the table. When Jimmy told Grandfather about how they carried him back to the balcony by his arms, Genya broke in again. We go in Jimmy's house and we find great big eating. Anton opened the refrigerator. We take Jimmy and food in bag to bridge. You know whole story now. Then Grandfather raised one wing. His face was suddenly serious. Boys, we've got to talk about tomorrow, about what might happen. I better begin at the beginning.